Peace. Black Americans don't owe anybody, anywhere, anything. Absolutely nothing. More specifically speaking, to those of you who do feel that African Americans owe you. Black Americans owe y'all a grand total of nada. Nothing. Zilch. Bupkis. Now, check your heart rate. How's that feel? How does it feel to hear that Black Americans don't owe you anything? Does it make you feel provoked? Do you feel like maybe you need to add a little bit of historical context or check or correct me? And can you sit comfortably with that? Or do you feel some type of way? Does it feel divisive to hear that Black Americans don't owe you anything? Do you feel the need to lean in right now? Or you good? You good? Because depending on how you feel hearing that Black Americans don't owe you anything will determine whether your contribution to Black Americans is real or imagined. Because recently in my comments, as we've been talking about a time like this and the pressure being applied by others on Black people to get up and get involved as if we hadn't been up and involved all along. Other historically oppressed people feel the need to slide up in our comments and remind us of what we owe them. You say things like, remember that Mexico banned slavery before the United States did. But what you don't say is, more specifically, it was Vicente Guerrero.
Okay, just imagine I'm saying Vicente Guerrero every time you hear me say Vincent. My bad.
Who banned slavery before the United States did. What you don't mention is Vicente Guerrero was Afro-Mexican on his father's side. And what you don't say is the thanks that Vicente Guerrero got for banning slavery in Mexico was stabbed in the back, executed, put to death, and racism against Afro-Mexican persisted in the Mexican territory despite the abolition of slavery. That's the part you didn't mention. Indigenous people say things like, you came first, that genocide is worse than chattel slavery. But the part you don't mention is some nations of indigenous folk participated in the chattel slavery of Africans at a higher rate than white Americans. What you don't mention is that on the Trail of Tears, Black enslaved people died at a higher rate than the indigenous people on the trail, because those Black enslaved people had to bear the brunt of servitude to their indigenous slavers on the trail. And that when they got to where they were going out west, those indigenous nations refused to emancipate the enslaved Black folk that got them there, until the United States government struck a deal for those people to be set free, at which point these indigenous nations cast these Black folk out into the wild without a nation at all, scrubbed them from the scrolls, and denied acknowledgement of their descendants henceforth and forevermore. Then mocked them as pretendians if they tried to reconnect those past ancestral connections to the tribe that enslaved their ancestors. Black passing indigenous people are treated very differently than white passing indigenous people, despite the $5 Indian phenomenon that primarily benefited white people. I've even heard some continental Africans and Caribbean people say that Black Americans owe them in some capacity, that the Haitian Revolution hastened the emancipation of enslaved people in the Americas by pressing the Louisiana Purchase, except that the Gullah Wars existed in the United States long before the Haitian Revolution even began and continued to decades after. And revolutionaries such as John Horse with the Seminole tribe had fought the United States Army to a standstill for their liberation. What you don't mention is how some of the Haitian mulatto class came to the States and became enslavers themselves, and eventually crossed over to passing for white. I could go on. Black Americans don't owe any of you, anyone for that matter, anything. Even if you did something for us, many of those of you, like the Irish, who did do something with us, also did something to us. We don't owe you anything. If you do feel like we owe you, that's because your motives were not altruistic. They were opportunistic. They were transactional. It was a quid pro quo. I am currently using a Palestine drink can as a mic holder. You might have seen me do some spots for Palestine Soda. I do not have a paid sponsorship with Palestine Soda. I am currently wearing a keffiyeh in solidarity with the Palestinian plight, a plight that I've been in solidarity with since I was a child. And the Palestinian people don't owe me anything. Absolutely zero. I am not a technophile who keeps up with the latest techie stuff. I buy secondhand electronics for the purpose of harm reduction in the Congo. And the Congolese people owe me absolutely
nothing.
Of all the people that I've done anything for, nobody owes me a thing. I remember once giving skate lessons to some children in a park, and one particular kid that I was giving lessons to, his jealous, abusive father, came out there, saw me giving him lessons, and immediately accosted his mom. At which point I stepped forward to offer him a few skateboard lessons, except the skateboard wasn't going to go under his feet. Fast forward to the following week, that same mother and son came out to the park where I was giving skate lessons to kids, and she was grateful. You know what I didn't do? Sup, shorty? Imagine what kind of creep I would have been if I had tried to leverage her gratefulness and my contribution to her safety for my own gain. If you think Black Americans owe you anything for anything you have done for us, y'all some creeps. Black Americans have had more done to us than for us by anyone else, bar none. So if you are trying to leverage whatever it is you have done for us for love and deference as a debt, you a creep. You know how many times I've seen my father and his friends do things for one another, even neighbors, people that they didn't know, and say, nah, you don't owe me nothing. You done sat up underneath the hood with my dad all night long with one light bulb working on his truck and nothing but a plate from my mama the whole time to tie you over at dinner time. And when you were done, my daddy didn't owe you nothing. That is friendship. That is solidarity. That is the love that you are trying to leverage, but you do not deserve. One more time, Black America don't owe you. We out here.